Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle. This is Michelle Reads YA, and today I'm giving you my December 2020 wrap-up. In December, I read 18 books. I will only be talking to you about a few of them because 5 of them I did for a video that you will see next week. I technically read them in 2020, so I wanted them to count, but I don't want to talk about it before the vlog comes out. So yeah, and then 2 are Harry Potter. So yeah, but I have a lot of other books to talk to you about, so let me just get into it. I read a lot of books. The first book I read in December was You Say It First by Katie Cotugno. I have read a lot of Katie Cotugno this year, and not all of it has been great. This one I ended up giving 3 stars. I thought it was okay. I'm not going to lie to you right now. I don't remember a lot about it. It was a 3-star read. It was just okay. I definitely don't remember the characters' names. But what I can tell you is that this girl is very liberal, and honestly, so am I. But I really don't like books about politics in YA. I don't know. I'm like so politically involved in my real life that like I don't really want to read about it. Anyway, I didn't know this going in. Anyway, so this girl, she like calls people and asks them all around the country if they are registered to vote, and she calls up this one guy and asks for his dad. His dad is dead, and they get into like an argument, and she calls him back later and they start becoming friends. Blah 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 blah. It was okay. 3 stars. I listened to an audiobook. I finished it and I didn't hate it. I've hated a lot of other Katie Cotugno's books this year, so good job. I honestly think I am going to give up on Katie Cotugno. I am definitely not going to buy any more of her books. If it's available through my library, then sure, I'll give it a try, but I just don't think she's the author for me, and I wasn't super impressed with this one, and that's okay. The next book that I read was a reread, and I'm so glad I did it. I read this book for the first time 5 years ago and listened to it on audiobook. I listened to it on CDs in my car. I believe there were like 30 CDs. It was a time. Anyway, I listened to it for the first time at 2.5 times speed, and I had a great time. That's 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is the first Stephen King book I have ever read, and it's still amazing. I still gave it 5 stars. Stephen King, personally, I think kind of sucks, but his books are amazing. So, you know, it is what it is. This is the story of Jake, who is shown this portal into 1958 where he turns into George Emerson, and he goes on this plot to stop the assassination of JFK in 1963. It's so good. I'm definitely a history nerd, and for some reason am really intrigued by the JFK assassination, so if this sounds like you, give this one a try, and definitely do an audiobook. The audiobook is so good. I remember listening to it the first time on audiobook, and it was like one of my earlier experiences with listening to audiobooks. It's just so good, and then listening to it again 5 years later, same experience. Like, it's just so good. This was 5 stars. The next book that I read was a book that I read for book club, and that is Pet by Akwa Emeze. I really like this. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I was not liking this in the beginning. I did not like the writing style at all. I believe this is their first venture into YA literature, and it felt more like a middle grade novel. Nothing wrong with that, but the writing just felt very juvenile for the heavy subject matter that this book was about. But in the end, despite all the writing, I really like this. This is a story of a trans girl who brings a monster to life, even though they live in this utopia where monsters no longer exist, and the monster is out to get someone who has done something bad, and you find out what it is, and it deals with this particular subject really interestingly, and I really enjoyed reading this. It was like a 200-page book. I flew through it, and I am in a slump physically reading books, and I just thought it was so good. I don't think it's gotten a lot of hype anywhere, but I absolutely suggest this book. So good. yes, do it. The next book that I listened to was The Voting Booth by Brandy Colbert. Didn't I just say that, hey, I don't like books about politics? Correct. But I own this and it was available on my Libby, so I wanted to get out of the way, and I really like this. This one wasn't so much with like putting politics down your throat. This was more about voter suppression, which I'm very interested in. So these two people meet. It's told in one day, and if you know, I really like stories told in one day, so this was right on my alley. So they meet, they're complete strangers, and she is trying to help him vote for the first time ever. It doesn't say what election this is, but I believe they're in California. It feels like 2020 presidential election though, but it doesn't have a time frame. So there are a lot of obstacles for him to vote for the first time, and then, you know, a little romance in there. Either way, I really like this. It was a really fast read. I listened to it in one day, and I just really, this is my second Brandy Colbert, and it was completely different from Point, which was her debut, but I just think she's an excellent writer, and I cannot wait to read anything else by Brandy Colbert. And even though this is about politics, and I said I don't like books about politics, this was a good one because it wasn't like shoving everything down your throat. And voter suppression and learning about voter suppression is very important, so I really enjoyed this one. The next book that I listened to was The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. I physically read this about 2 years ago up to page 100 and then just like put it down and was like, I'm gonna keep it, but I don't know. So when it was available on my audiobook, I was like, let's do this. It took me about a day and a half to listen to, and it was great. So it's a mystery thriller, I guess. The first like plot twist I saw coming. I didn't think that was quite interesting, and then there's like 3 plot twists. The second plot twist was okay, but at the very end, in the epilogue, there is another plot twist, and that's what got me. So I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. Otherwise, like, it wasn't like super thrilling. This is a story about a woman who has been left by her husband, and you are perceived to think that she is trying to do something to his new girlfriend. And yeah, I can't tell you a lot about it because I would ruin the whole thing, but I thought it was good enough. It was okay. The next book that I listened to was Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I have had this on my TBR for a very long time and bought it and was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna read it. I haven't yet, but I listened to the audiobook in about 2 days. This book is dark. This is probably the darkest book I read in 2020, and that is definitely darker than My Dark Vanessa, I think. And they deal with similar things. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but there's a lot going on in this book and I don't even know. So 2 sisters who are estranged lost their sister. They believe she's dead about 25 years ago, and it starts with them reconnecting after something happens to one of the sisters, and that is about all that I can say. I can say that it's very fast-paced. It's super dark. There's like, I don't know, there's so many dark things in this book. I don't mind listening or reading anything like that, but I know it can be triggering for so many people, so definitely look into the trigger warnings for this one if you're thinking about it. But it was super fast-paced. I ended up giving it 4 stars because I felt somewhere in the middle it was a little draggy, and I was just like, are we ever gonna get to the end? And then we did, and then we were there. So I really enjoyed my time listening to this, even though that sounds bad because of the subject matter, but you know. And then the next book that I read was for my January pick for book club, and that is Invisible Differences by Julie Dashes. This is a graphic novel set in France, so it just got published in the United States in December, so this is like brand new. But basically this is about a girl who knows that she is different but hasn't been diagnosed with anything, but she has a very strict routine. She does not like going out of her comfort zone and anything like that. And then finally she reads about Asperger's and believes that that is her diagnosis. And I don't know the process here in the United States, but where she was in France, she waited months and months to get into this center where they evaluated her, and she is diagnosed with Asperger's, and it just like opens up a whole new world for her, and she's very accepting of this diagnosis, and she meets friends who understands. And I really like this. This was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. I read this on my phone and it took me quite a long time, but I enjoyed all of it. The art was beautiful and I loved it. It was 4-star read for me. I don't know why it wasn't a 5-star. I just feel like 4 stars is better. I don't know, it was good. I enjoyed my time. It was a nice graphic novel, and it was enlightening to see not really how we do it here because it wasn't set here, but how they diagnose someone in a different country. So I thought that was really interesting. The next book that I listened to and DNF'd, I haven't DNF'd in a while, so whatever, was The Library Book by Susan Orlean. This is the story about the Central Los Angeles Library got burned, not all the way down, but had a fire in the 80s, and I did not know about that, and apparently it was a big deal, and then that was kind of cool. But then this author goes into like the process of how libraries work, and as a former library employee, I could not have cared less about that. I truly did not care about any of this. She was like talking about how they transfer books between branches, and I was like, I know how this works and I do not care. So I ended up DNFing this 25% in. If you are super into libraries and want to know all about that, then this is probably the book for you. The next book that I listened to was 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott, Mickey Daughtry, and Tobias Akanis. I got this before the movie came out, never saw the movie, kind of lost interest in reading the book, but then it was available on Libby, so I did that, and I read this, or listened to this in about a day, and it was great. This is the story of 2 teens who are in the hospital with cystic fibrosis, and they end up falling for each other, and I gave it 3 stars. Yes, it is a lot like The Fault in Our Stars, but I didn't think it had as much heart as The Fault in Our Stars. Also, it did feel very 2014-ish YA contemporary, and I am past that in my life. So it wasn't great. It definitely was not bad, but I don't think I'm going to go seek out the movie or anything like that. So I read it. Okay. The next book that I read was called The Dead and the Gone by Susan Beth Pfeffer. This is the sequel to Life as We Know It. I read this back in, I think, February or March, and I was on a booktube hiatus, so I never talked about the first one. This is the sequel. So basically, in the first book, asteroid hits the moon, and chaos. It kills the tides, like anywhere you live, coastal, you're dead. No electricity, so there's no food. It's chaos. It is a dystopian novel, and you would think I'd be over dystopian novels, but this one is kind of good because what if this shit really happened? It's scary as fuck. These books are scary, and I cannot get enough of them. Anywho, so this sequel is about a boy who lives in New York, and it's his story of trying to survive. After this, his parents are missing. He can't get a hold of them, so he and his 2 sisters are trying to survive after this tragedy, and it was good. In her first book, it was very anti-religion, and in this second book, it was all about religion, and I thought that was super interesting. I don't know if she got like backlash from her first book or if she intended to do this the whole time, but I just thought that was super interesting. I ended up giving this 3 stars because I feel like, and I felt like this in the first book, that somewhere in the middle it just gets so repetitive. so I wasn't enjoying that. It was just the same thing for every day, and it got a little boring until the end again. So there's one more book in the series. I'm definitely going to read it, so if that's helpful, 3 stars. And then the last book that I read for the whole year of 2020 was Mexican Gothic by Silvio Moreno Garcia. Oh, I don't even remember what I gave this. Let me check. I believe I gave this 2 stars. And here is my review. I did not like this. It took so long for it to even get kind of creepy, and then we were there and it was kind of confusing. That's it. That's how we feel. I know a lot of people really, really like this. They were like, oh, it's so creepy. It's so, ugh. And I was like, not impressed. And I guess this is horror. It won the Goodreads horror thing, beating out Stephen King. So good for her. But it did not do anything for me. I don't know. I am also not into like gothic horror. So that could be it. I don't know. 2 stars. It wasn't a great way to end 2020, but like, you know, that's kind of how the year went, so yeah, whatever. So that is most of everything that I read in December. You will see the rest of it in my next video coming out next week. So yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching my video. See you in my next one. Bye!